Okay, so good morning, everyone. Today is our review section. Thank you for those students who have emailed me and asked me some specific questions. So I was able to prepare for this lecture based on your questions. Okay. In general, it looks like chapter 12 is the chapter students find most challenging. So as you can see that this is reflected by the students' request for review, mostly is on chapter 12. So I'm going to do some questions together with you. Okay. What I will do is I will show the student's email message without revealing student's identity, okay? So you can see that what kind of questions students are concerned about. Okay, so let me see. Okay, so in this is a question asked. Basically, this is the chapter 6. This is one of the assignment question. So student told me to review it in the class. So this is the question. I typed the question instead of using the pictures from the student. So Sunland Incorporation sells its product for $24 per unit, and the variable costs $16 per unit. Its fixed costs are, this is a typo, I believe, 147,200. I think that's the one. So that's the fixed cost, 147,200. The question is asked to calculate the required sales in units to achieve its targeting operating income of 10% of the total costs. Okay, so the reason why this question might be a little bit challenging is because normally when you were asked to calculate the required sales, you would be provided with the number of the operating income, right? The targeted operating income. And then you can use that formula. You'll be able to calculate it very easily, right? So in this case, there's a layer of complications. This income is not a specific number. It is 10% of the total cost, okay? So therefore, we're not able to just directly use the formula to calculate the number. Instead, we have to use a little bit of algebra, okay, to set up an equation, and then we can solve the unknown, okay? So the equation we can use is the contribution margin minus fixed overhead, fixed cost equals operating income, right? So that will be the equation. So if we set up the unknown using that equation, we should be able to solve that information required here. So now if we assume the unknown is X, so that's the one we want to know, required sales in units. So what happened is the operating income is based on 10% of the total income. So first, I want to calculate what's my total cost, right? What's my total cost? So my total cost has two components, a variable cost and a fixed cost. So my variable cost is $16 per unit. So if I sell X units, so my variable cost should be $16 times X. That's my total variable cost. And then my fixed cost is given 147,200. So I add them up. This gives me the total cost. And now we learned that the target profit is 10% of this total cost. So therefore, I use 10% multiplied by the total cost. That's my profit. Okay. I can also calculate my profit based on the equation, contribution margin minus fixed cost. What's my contribution margin? My sales price is $24. My variable cost is $16. So my contribution margin per unit is $8. So if I sell X units, my total contribution margin will be 8 times X, and my fixed cost is 147,200. Okay, so therefore, this profit has to equal to 10% of the total cost. If you break the bracket here, that will be 1.6x plus 14,720. So you can see you set up this equation, and now I want to solve x. So I do a little bit of algebra by moving x to the left side of the equation. I found that 6.4 times x equals $165,920. So x equals 25,300 units. Okay, so is this clear to you? Give me a thumb up if you understand this question. Okay, let's do this together. Okay, so give me a thumb up. 1, 2, 3. Okay, you are still maybe learning how to find the thumb up, right? If you have any questions, please let me know. Any questions? Any questions about this problem? Okay, so no questions, I will move on, okay? So this is the question. Okay, so let's move on to the next. So this one, the student is asking about, okay, it would be great help if you could take a deep look at these questions, fixed cost, variable cost on chapter 12. It's quite easy to understand about other costs, but for the fixed cost, it's really confusing to me. Find questions from the assignment challenging. Chapter 12 is a really tough topic. Okay, so let me see what I have. So I'm going to walk through this question. This question is also specifically asked by another student. So the question is about the overhead variance, okay, about the chapter 12 overhead variance. I'm not sure about there was a student asking me about the password to this Zoom link. So just give me a second. So password, let me see. Okay, so how should I find the password? Okay, where's the password? I used to know how to do that, but I can't see it right now. Audio. Where is it? I'm sorry, Ethan. I cannot quickly find out where the password is. Okay, I'm sorry for that. So I need to carry on because the students are waiting. So for this question, let me see. Okay, okay. So this company overhead rate was based on estimate of, this is 180,000, okay? And the budgeted direct labor hours is 18,000. So basically, the activity index for the overhead is direct labor hour, and the overhead rate is based on $180,000 cost and 18,000 direct labor hours. The standard allows 2 hours of direct labor per unit produced. In May, the production is 790 units. The actual overhead incurred in May was 19,000. So the 19,000 is the actual cost. The overhead budgeted for 1580 standard direct labor hours. Okay, so overhead budgeted for that 1580 labor hours. The cost is $15,560. And the split between fixed and variable now is given. So 4,500 for cost for fixed, 11,060 for variable cost. So this question is asked to calculate the total overhead variance, the budget overhead variance, and the volume variance. Okay. Okay, so let's first think about the total overhead variance, right? So what is the total overhead variance? So you use actual overhead cost. This is the actual cost. And the overhead applied, okay? The overhead applied based on the cost, the driver, right? The cost driver. In this case is the direct labor hour. Okay, so it's overhead applied based on the number of standard direct labor hours allowed for the amount of units produced. Okay, so we need to know, okay, what is the amount of units actually produced? So what's the standard requirement for direct labor hour on that level of actual output? And then there's a standard rate for the overhead cost. So first, let's calculate the standard overhead rate. So the predetermined overhead rate is 180,000 divided by 18,000. So we have $10 predetermined overhead cost per direct labor hour. And then I will consider my actual overhead cost. My actual overhead is given. So that is here, the actual overhead incurred in May was 19,000 here. So that's given, actual overhead, 19,000. Okay. What is the actual production in May? The actual production in May, that production level is 790 units. And by standard, each unit will allow 2 hours of direct labor. Okay. So I multiplied the actual production level, 790 units, with 2 hours per unit, 2 direct labor hours per unit. That's the standard. So I would calculate what is the standard labor hours required, allowed for this level of production. Okay. So, and I also know that for each direct labor hour, the standard cost is $10. Okay, we just calculated, right? Here, that's the standard cost for overhead, right? Predetermined overhead rate is $10. So then this one is my overhead applied. So I compare this with my actual. I have a $3,200 unfavorable variance. Okay, so does this make sense? How to calculate the total overhead variance? Okay, if you understand this, please give me a thumb up. 1, 2, 3. Give me a thumb up. Okay. Probably half. I've seen half thumb ups. What about the other students? Do you guys have any question? Okay, no question. So I will move on. Okay, so this is the first part of the question is answered. So the total overhead is calculated by actual overhead minus overhead applied. Okay. Okay, what about overhead budget variance? Okay, budget variance. So what is the budget variance? So budget variance is you compare your actual overhead cost versus your budget overhead. Okay, so in this question, they told us in May, the budgeted overhead is $15,560. Okay, so I'm comparing my actual 19,000 versus my budget cost, 15,560. So I have a $3,440 unfavorable variance. Okay. Okay. Does this make sense? If you understand this overhead budget variance, please give me a thumb up. 1, 2, 3. Okay, thank you very much. If you don't understand this question, can you please let me know? Okay, I didn't hear anything, so I will move on. Okay. Okay, so the last question is to calculate volume variance. Please note that this volume variance is only for fixed overhead, right? Fixed overhead. So I'll take a look at this chart, right? So this is probably one when you do a calculation you are referring to. So we know there's the variable overhead variance, okay? So in this case, you have a variable overhead spending variance versus a variable overhead efficiency variance. This variable overhead variance is quite similar to direct materials and direct labor variances. Okay, so basically, what happened is you are comparing your actual variable cost, okay, versus your actual labor hours times standard overhead rate. Okay, so this will give you the spending variance. So when you compare the actual hours multiplied by standard rate with standard hours allowed times the standard rate. So that difference is about efficiency. If you compare the middle and the right, you'll notice that they are using the same rate, right? They're using the same standard variable overhead rate, right? So the difference comes from this number of hours. So the middle calculation use the total actual hours, but the right column here, they're using the standard hours allowed for the level of actual production, okay? They keeping the rate the constant, but the number of hours is different. So therefore, this is called efficiency, right? Efficiency. Are you going to use more direct labor hours compared to the standard hours allowed, or you are going to use less? So you can see that difference capture the idea of efficiency. Now, if you compare your left to the middle, okay, so this one, total actual variable overhead cost is total total actual hours, right, times actual rate, actual overhead, variable overhead rate. So you can see that in this comparison, they all use total actual hours, but they are using different overhead rate, actual versus standard. So therefore, this is about the spending variance because it's related to the rate of the predetermined variable overhead rate. Right? So this is together. This is the variable overhead project variance. So this is the variable overhead variance. The fixed overhead variance is different. Okay, it's different. So why it's different? Okay, because the nature of fixed cost, it's fixed cost, right? Regardless of the level of the activity. So even the level of the activity changes, the fixed cost remain the same, right? So what happened here is you do not, when you are doing this variance analysis, okay, the middle, this middle column, the fixed overhead, in the variance analysis in the middle, this is the standard budget, okay? This is their normal capacity hours. So when you compare this standard budget under the normal capacity hours with the actual fixed manufacturing overhead, so you have a spending variance, okay, which is just the budget variance because there is no fixed overhead efficiency variance. Why? Because the fixed overhead cost is fixed. It's not like the flexible budget, right? You at normal capacity, you have a fixed cost budget, but when you see I'm going to use a flexible budget, right? The fixed cost is still the same, right? So even your standard budget hours, that's the normal capacity hours, is different from the actual hours, right? The fixed overhead cost is the same because it's fixed. So in the middle, just knowing this is the standard budget, right? This is the static budget number. And then this one compared to the actual fixed overhead cost, you have a spending variance, which is also budget variance. And then you compare the fixed overhead budgeted for standard hours allowed. So this is the time you based on the actual production level and the number of hours allowed by this actual production level. They're using the same standard overhead rate, okay? And then the difference between these two, the middle and the right, is due to the volume change, right? So under normal capacity hours, okay, under normal capacity hours, your budget is only that you can only serve 1,500 direct labor hours. However, in the real situation, you are able to produce 790 units. Each unit requires 2 direct labor hours. So now the actual hours is 1,580. So you have $80 exceeding that normal capacity. So that's a volume variance, because normally your volume is only 1,500, but now your direct labor hour based on the output, the allowed hours is already exceeding that normal capacity. So therefore, you have this is called variance of fixed overhead volume variance. Okay, fixed overhead. This time, it's exceeding that normal capacity. So it's a good news. It's benefits the company. So it's a favorable variance. Okay. So how do you calculate that volume variance? Okay. So the volume variance, you can see it's just for the fixed overhead cost, right? For the variable overhead cost, you have a spending variance and the efficiency variance. It's only under the fixed overhead cost overhead you have volume variance. So this was asked by the question. So how do we calculate it, right? So in this case, we want to first calculate what's the predetermined fixed overhead rate. What's the predetermined fixed overhead rate? Okay. So what is my normal capacity, right? My normal capacity is 18,000 hours for a year and 1,500 for a month. So in the month of May, my normal capacity is 1,500 hours. And we know that the cost is 4,500 fixed overhead. So therefore, I use 4,500 fixed overhead divided by the normal capacity direct labor hour, 1,500. I have a $3 fixed overhead per direct labor hour. Okay, that's the $3. Okay, so what's my normal capacity hours? 1,500, 18,000 a year, right? 1,500 a month. And for each hour, that's the $3. Okay. And then for the actual output, right, 790, and each one requires 2 direct labor hour. So, and then each direct labor hour is $3. Okay, so now I'm comparing these two, I get a $240 favorable variance. This is the volume variance. Okay, so that's my answer to the last part of the question. Fixed overhead volume variance is 240 favorable. Okay, so now I'm going to ask your question. Okay, so does anyone have any questions about the overhead variances calculation? Ethan, are you trying to talk? I didn't hear anything, but it seems like there are some actions on your side. Can you go back to the slide that shows all the calculations? Okay. So if you understand these questions, please give me a thumb up. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3 Okay. Very good. I see 9 thumb ups. That's very good. Does anyone have any question? No question? Okay. Okay, so so I have another email messaging from a student. Basically, it's also asking about chapter 12. Okay, and maybe have some challenges about value plus assignment. Okay, so I'm going to show you this question. Okay, so we just did a overhead variance calculation. So now I want to also show you how the materials and labor variance is calculated. Okay, so we're going to use this question. This is also from the assignment. So the company budgeted the following cost standards for the current year. So you have a direct materials. So standard is you need 2 kilograms plastic. Each kilogram costs $5. Therefore, that's a $10 per unit materials cost. For direct labor, each unit requires 2 hours. Each hour costs $12. So for each unit, the standard cost of direct labor hour is $24. Variable manufacturing overhead is $10.50 per unit. Fixed manufacturing overhead is $7.05 per unit. If you add up the materials, labor, and overhead together, you have $51.55. Okay, so this is my information for the standard costs. And now I have information about actual cost. So this actual cost is to produce 2,660 units. Okay. Direct materials used. This is 5810 kilogram. Direct materials purchased. This materials used versus purchased, they are not the same concept, right? Just knowing that. You purchased 6,610 kilograms materials, and the cost for this many materials is 32,389. You actually used 6,950 labor hours. The cost for that is 65,330. The variable manufacturing overhead cost is 32,900, and the fixed manufacturing overhead cost is 17,600. So this is the information I have, and the question is to ask about calculate material price variance for materials you purchased, calculate material quantity variance for materials used, and calculate the labor price variance and the efficiency variance. And this is the picture we're going to use to do the calculation. And this works for both materials and the labor. So as I introduced in the class, you will set up 3 columns. To the left side is the actual cost. To the right side, that's the standard cost. And in the middle, it's AQSP, actual quantity, standard price. Okay, AQSP, actual quantity times standard price. So if I compare left and middle, I'm holding quantity constant. I'm comparing actual price versus the standard price. So this is my price variance. When I'm comparing my middle to the right, the price used in that calculation is all standard price. So I'm comparing the actual quantity used versus what a standard quantity, what the quantity would be allowed by the standard. Okay, so that's the quantity variance. So price variance plus quantity variance, so you have a total variance, right? So let's take a look at this question. So I want to know what is the actual materials purchased, right? What is the actual materials purchase cost? So the actual materials purchased, the cost is 32,389. So 32,389. Okay. And then I want to calculate that price variance. So I use actual quantity purchased times standard rate. This is the middle one. So what's the actual quantity? The actual quantity is 6,610 kilograms. So this is your actual quantity. What's the standard price? The standard price is $5 per kilogram. So these two numbers will multiply. So I have 6,610 times 5. So $33,050. Now I want to think about the actual quantity used. Right? What's the actual quantity used? Actual quantity used is here, direct materials used is 5810, right? 5810 kilograms. And then the standard cost for each kilogram is $5. So 5810 times 5. So this is my cost, 29 and 50, right? And then to the very right, you have the standard cost. So how many materials you should use, right? So you are producing 2,660 units. By standard, in order to produce this level of units, you're gonna need 2 kilograms each, right? 2 kilograms each, that's the standard. So I'm going to use the level of the actual production, 2,660 times $2, right? That's the standard cost. 2 hours, right? Sorry, 2 kilograms required per unit, and times $5. That's the standard cost per kilograms. So when I'm comparing the first two numbers, when I'm comparing these two, that is my price variance, right? Price variance happened when you are purchasing the materials, right? So price variance happened when you are purchasing materials, right? So you can compare, you notice that the actual cost is lower than the standard. So therefore you have a 661 favorable variance. So you think about the quantity variance, the efficiency, you are dealing with the quantity used, how efficiently all these materials are used, right? So the actual quantity used times the standard rate, okay? So this is the actual quantity used. And then this is this one. And then for the standard cost, you are calculating, okay, you're calculating what's the standard materials, standard kilograms of materials is going to be used. So for each unit, you need 2 kilograms, and they produced 2,660 kilograms. So you use the multiplication, you know that's the number of kilograms required, right? And each one by standard is $5, right? So therefore, each kilogram is $5. Therefore, you can calculate your standard cost is 26,600. So when you compare these two numbers, you notice there is a quantity variance of $2,450 unfavorable, right? Unfavorable because the actual amount of materials used is more than allowed by the standard. Okay, so you can see this is my answer to the first two questions. What is the price variance? What is the quantity variance? This question is a little bit challenging, possibly because you have to make the difference between materials purchased versus materials used, right? Because when you have a raw materials inventory, right, you don't always get exactly the same amount of direct materials will be exactly 100% used, right? So you could have purchased more and you didn't use all of them. That's fine. It's just your ending materials inventory will go up, right? Or you didn't purchase enough, right? And it's what you purchased is not sufficient for the production, but that's not a big deal. Then it just means your ending inventory balance will be reduced, right? So the idea here is, the price variance is really about the buying the materials, right? You buy the materials. That's about the price variance. You pay a price. And then for the quantity efficiency, right? For the quantity variance, so that's really about how best you are using your materials, right? Do you have any waste? So therefore, you can see that the left two is dealing with materials purchased, and the right two is dealing with materials used, right? And then some students are really smart. You may wonder, what is this difference? What is this difference? Does anyone know? What is the difference between these two numbers? Anybody know? What is the difference? What is this difference between the two numbers? In this case, do you have inventory increasing or decreasing? In this case, is your raw materials inventory going up or going down? Is in this case, okay, finally someone answered me. It's going down. That's because you are using the materials purchased. Okay. So I purchased the 6610. I used the 5810, right? So what happened to my ending inventory, ending raw material inventory? So basically, you purchased more than you can use, right? So your ending inventory level is going up, right? So the difference captured the ending balance increase, right? That's the difference. Okay. Okay, so if you understand this question, please give me a thumb up. 1, 2, 3, thumb up. Okay, thank you. Okay, so now I'm going to move to the labor variance, right? So if you can figure this out, labor is just simpler. So what's my actual labor cost? Okay, so that information is also given. My actual labor cost. Here's my actual labor cost. My actual labor cost is 65,330, and the actual labor hour is 69.50, and the standard cost is $12 per hour. So you're gonna need this information. So my actual cost is 65,330. My middle guy is the actual labor hour times the standard rate. So actual hour is 69.50 times standard rate 12. So that's my 83,400. And what is my standard cost? So my standard cost is to make 2660 units, right? Each unit will require 2 direct labor hours. And by standard, each direct labor hour will be $12. So I do the calculation, I get 63,840. So what's my rate variance? When I'm compare the left to the middle, this is my price variance. So that's $18,000, 70 cents, $70 favorable because the actual cost is lower. So now I'm comparing, I'm comparing my, So now I'm comparing my oh, come on. My computer is running slow. So now I'm comparing my middle to the right. So that is my so this is my quantity variance. Okay. So I have a favorable quantity variance of 19,560 unfavorable variance. Okay. So it's relatively easier for direct labor hours because it does not have that raw materials inventory. Okay, so I have gone through all the questions students asked. So is there any other questions a student might have right now in the class? Go ahead, Kai.
Hi. I don't remember if you went over it. It's more about just the final. So what's the distribution, would you say, between the midterm stuff and then the things after the midterm?
Um, right now, when you are learning the later chapters, they are very connected with the early chapters. So
Mm,
I'm not able to quantify a percentage for you, like what's the percentage before, what's the percentage after. But the
yeah.
idea is the most of the weight will be on the materials after the midterm.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not able to quantify that. Yeah,
Yeah.
because
Okay.
even when you're solving some later chapters, you still require the knowledge from the earlier chapter, right? So they are connected. Yeah.
Right. Okay. But okay, so just because like I don't know how like redundant or important like the first chapter is, or because like that is much different than the stuff we're doing now. But
Mm-hmm. Definitely, if you don't have a lot of time to prepare for this course, your focus is on the after the midterm, right? Um,
right.
but if you have more time to prepare, you need to prepare for everything, right?
Mm,
For those who want to get A plus, get A, definitely you want to, you know, make sure you prepare for every corner. Yeah,
thank you.
yeah, no problem. Will the format of the final be the same as the midterm? Um, did I post the information? Okay, let me see. I thought I posted the information already. Courses, this is one module. No, I didn't post it yet. Yeah, so I will post. I will post a page of document showing you how many questions are there. How much does each question worth? So that will be coming very quickly.